Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife overview to share with you guys. Why do I say overview, not review? Because this knife has been discontinued for a very long time. Doing a review on this knife wouldn't make a whole lot of sense because it's based on it's got some outdated elements to it. It's got some super interesting elements to it, but some outdated stuff. And then also you can't get it unless you want to go to the secondary market and pay way too much money for it. But it is interesting, and I like to show interesting things on this channel. So I'd like to present to you guys with the Zero Tolerance 0500, which is actually based on the G&G Hawk. This is a G&G Hawk design, but the MUDD was the original custom. Before I forget, what's the deal with this, right? There's a lot of stuff going on here. The idea with this knife, you know, this was back when ZT was doing like their mega, super overbuilt, ultra tactical, you know, that was their thing, right? Teaming up with G&G Hawk was you know, perfect for, you know, their target audience at the time. Honestly, I wish they'd return to stuff like this because this is just really cool. In fact, this might be one of the coolest. You know, this knife might have actually defined zero tolerance for a lot of people. But the idea here is that the knife is sealed in like every way imaginable. So they use these polyurethane seals here around the pivot to make it literally impossible for debris to get in there. Also their lock, the Hawk lock that they're using here, is also sealed off and super durable. So you know, I'm sure some people are like, well, is it as tough as the Triad lock? Because bleh, it's not. We're talking about a different approach here to durability and resiliency. It's not necessarily about the overwhelming strength of the lock, which is unquestionably strong and plenty strong for anything you could imagine throwing at this knife. But also, you know, the idea of whether or not debris can get in and slow the knife down or stop it from locking. This knife actually protects itself against that, which is something that hardly any other knives I've ever heard of are able to do. This is unique in the knife world and certainly unique for ZT. So that's really neat. Thank you so much to Frankie and Bird for sending this. I had seen this on their channel. I was like, I'd really like to take a look at one of those, and I put a, you know, little post up on Instagram in my community section on YouTube saying, hey, if anybody's got one of these, I'd really like to take a look. And they actually messaged me on Instagram and said, you want to just look at ours? It's been used, and I was like, yeah, sure. So thank you so much. I don't know why you guys wouldn't be subscribed to Birdshot. Actually, I watched their channel for a long time before ever even thinking about starting mine. So yeah, if you're not subscribed, go subscribe. They're awesome. I love their content. Really, really nice to just lay back and watch multiple uploads from Birdshot. Great stuff. All right. Thanks so much to my generous patrons for supporting me right now. If you'd like to get your hands on some of these cool stickers and other benefits, there is, of course, a link right down in the description. Your support would mean the world to me. And please follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. We will go ahead and do measurements and things, but just keep in mind I'm not really reviewing this. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, so we're just for your entertainment or for your information if you plan on going after this guy in the secondary market. Overall length, this knife coming in at just shy of 8.75 inches overall. Blade length about 3.6, maybe 3.6. Cutting edge about 3.4. Big knife, also a very thick knife. How about some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1? Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall. So you can see that this the 0500 is definitely a larger knife. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue is coming in at 8 inches overall. How about up against the Para 3? Spyderco Para 3 coming in at 7.25 inches overall. And last but not least, the Mini Griptilian. Mini Grip coming in at 6.75 inches overall. How is the action on this guy? The action is really interesting. So I've handled a couple of knives from G&G Hawk, and they all feel kind of the same. The first thing you guys are going to notice is that this knife is very clicky. I'll shut up for a sec so you can hear this. Ooh, boy, it's so satisfying. That hawk lock, or this, I am guessing it's the exact same setup. As you guys can see, we have a proprietary system here with the pivot, right? This is mine. I'm not gonna attempt to take it apart with tools that are obviously, you know, I don't have, that are especially meant to fit that pivot. But I'm gonna guess, like a lot of other folding knives that G&G Hawk do, that it's the hawk lock translating to a ZT production knife. That lock is very clicky. Essentially, the way that they've got the switch on this guy set up, sometimes it appears as almost like an Axis style. Like if you've seen my review on the Orbit, it appears, you know, like an Axis style lock, but it is not the same at all. To my knowledge, the system does not use Omega springs, but it's just a switch where you pull down and there's a little bit of tension, you know, keeping it, it's trying to push back up. You pull it down and it releases it. So, you know, you can sort of whip it out like that, and it's got the fidgety thing, or you can use the thumb stud and whip it closed. Right? It's cool. It's super fidgety and really, really durable. And on top of that, they've got the switch is sealed off so that nothing can get in there and mess with it, right? It's actually really smooth. Right here, nice and smooth, considering this whole area is completely pinched off. You would think that would create so much friction that it would be tight. No. In fact, it really is very smooth and very, very solid. I'm really impressed with this. It's unique. I've really never felt anything like it. It's very interesting. I think for just that element alone is going to be enough to draw people towards it. G&G Hawk are innovators, and arguably some of the greatest, craziest innovators that the knife world has seen. And this is a perfect example of what, you know, how popular their work can be if the culmination is, you know, the missile meets its target, right? This is a knife that has defined zero tolerance's peak as the hyper tactical, hyper aggressive, hyper hard use, blah 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 blah. That's, you know, this knife is a great example of that. Obviously, the custom is super duper popular as well, or they wouldn't have decided to collaborate with ZT. But yeah, I think that's this knife is a testament to that idea and how it translates really well with, you know, how it resonates really well with people. Anyways, wow, that was long-winded. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. Get out my tools here. I have some inexpensive options right here, and a driver that is more expensive that I just prefer. You can find all this stuff down in my description. So the pivot I'm not going to be able to get at, but oddly enough, so weird. The handle screws are T6, or the scale screws, right? And then back here, the actual, maybe the integrity screws, this one is definitely a T8. Yeah. So this screw back here is a T8. T6, T6, T6. We have G10 overlays on top of a 7075 aluminum frame. What's the difference between 6061 and 7075? 7075 is a lot stronger. It's a lot more of a durable grade of aluminum. It's still stain resistant. Technically, I guess aluminum can corrode. 6061 gets that, you know, it's I guess the strength to weight ratio is really good, but then also the excess corrosion resistance. The way I understand it is 7075 is slightly less corrosion resistant, but a lot tougher, a lot more impact resistant, but still lightweight, right? Had they used titanium on this, which probably would have been overkill in the strength department, it definitely would have added more weight to it, and it's really heavy. So this is interesting. I kind of understand why they use 7075, you know, and it's neat, right? We don't see 7075 on a lot of knives. This knife, I think, was from 2012. I honestly cannot remember when this was, you know, when it was the big deal for ZT. I want to say, somebody can correct me down in the comment section, but I think this knife was coming to an end when I kind of originally discovered ZT in 2012, 2013. So maybe it was even before that. Maybe it was 2010, 2011. I can't remember. But yeah, so ZT was not like exclusively using titanium on every single design back then. But yeah, okay, so hardware check, we're done with that. T6, I can't really complain about it. It is what it is. I imagine if this knife were made in 2020, they would definitely be using much larger fasteners to match all of the other oversized hardware on the knife. By the way, the pivot is a 5/16 pivot. That is gigantic. The barrel is 5/16. A 1/4-inch pivot barrel is considered really durable on a knife. 5/16. Wild, man. Really crazy. Okay, so let's go ahead and do carry profile. Thickness up against the Para 3. This is thick. Very, very thick. It's a pocket hog. Up against two knives that have awkward carry profiles and nobody ever complains about. Yeah, this thing's huge. It may not be quite as tall. In fact, actually, no. You know what? No, it is taller. It's taller than the, sorry, I'm turning, it's definitely taller than the PM2 and Para 3. So it is thicker, it is longer, and it is taller. The blade is also very thick. Up against the PM2's 145,000 stock thick blade, I'm going to guess that the blade on this guy's probably the ZT standard 155 thousandths. Let's take a look. Oh, sorry, let me close it off. God bless America. 0. There we go. All right. Yeah, on the dot, 155 thousandths. That's pretty typical for ZT. Weight on this guy. Now, take this with a grain of salt. It's an old knife based on an old style from ZT. You decide to not use steel or titanium liners. They use 70-75. It still comes in at 6.84 ounces. You guys see why it was important for them to use aluminum. I guarantee, had they used titanium, it would have been heavier, and it definitely would have been heavier in the same dimensions in steel. So, yeah, that's actually over. This knife is very thick. It's heavy. It's actually over the peak of my preferred weight range, right? Thick, heavy, wide, long, big. It's just, this would be too big for me to EDC. It's going to be too big for most people to EDC. If you're considering hunting this knife down to EDC it, you're probably going to be a little bit uncomfortable unless you just work outside all the time and you're carrying a whole bunch of other tools that are similar dimensions and weigh the same or more, right? Those are the people who are going to be like, it doesn't really matter to me, right? For everybody else, like 95% of people, I'm going to guess this is going to be, well, let's not say 95. Let's say 80 to 85% of people, this is probably going to be just way too big. But there is an odd charm to it. I'll give it that. It honestly, picking up this knife and holding it and imagining using it, right? It's like, man, I have a very capable folding tool, a tool that normally, you know, the issue with the integrity is the fact that the blade works on a pivot and it folds, right? But this thing, you know, while still being a folding knife, really feels exceptionally capable, right? It is. But then you have that coupled with the fact that it's so thick and so meaty and so robust. It feels exactly like what it looks like. For anybody wondering. All right, did we get through all of that? I feel like I've covered everything there. So what's the blade steel on this guy? It's actually 154 cm, which was blade steel that, you know, in today's light, it's not anything special, but truthfully, like, in terms of, like, amazing edge retention or amazing toughness or, you know, like LC200N, it can't corrode, right? This is a balanced steel. Right? The parameters of, you know, the cake mix for any steel, it's the same parameters. You put something in, you got to take something out, right? So different compositions are going to be better or worse for other people. The reason that I love 154 cm and CPM 154 even to this day, these are still my favorite steels of all time, even over 20 CV and M390 and 204P and LC200N and Van Eyck Super Clean and Maximit and all that other stuff, right? Yes, I like this a lot because it is well-rounded. It's plenty tough. It holds an okay edge. It's very easy to sharpen, and it's stainless. I love 154 cm, and I think it's an awesome steel for this style of knife. I mean, this knife is obviously made to be used. It's obviously made to be versatile and work in a bunch of different settings. Why would they not want a perfectly well-rounded steel? The grain structure of 154 cm is already very fine, so the difference between it and its powder-formed brother is very minor. Maybe, according to ProTech, maybe a 5 to 10% increase in toughness, which it doesn't necessarily need. A lot of toughness is dependent on the geometry of the blade, which in this case, it's very robust, right? but 154 cm is already somewhat tough, so that's whatever. 154 cm is fine. Sorry, I'm going to move my mat here. I'm moving around, waving around. I keep moving the mat. So yeah. Let's take a look at the anatomy. This thing is clearly like old school ZT. Very chunky, right? We've got the massively heavy peel ply texture. This is super aggressive texturing. It will definitely tear your pants up, right? It is nicely knocked down, right? There's some sharp edges, the raised areas of the G10. Almost makes it look like there's 2 layers of G10 on top of the aluminum. But a little bit sharp right there, right? This is from a different time period in the knife. We're not really going to judge it too hard. There's a gigantic lanyard loop back here. But there is an awesome deep carry clip that's actually mountable on either side, and it will carry absolutely deep. And honestly, it has that swoop that I like. I really like this clip. The clip is awesome. It's really, lefties rejoice. Well, no, don't start rejoicing yet. I'm sorry. I forget this lock is primarily designed for a right-handed person, though it still can be manipulated by a left-handed person. You got to use this finger and then maybe push down right there, and you can kind of do it. It's definitely a little more clunky with the left hand, right? We didn't talk about this on deployment. It has these massively oversized thumb stud things, and they're kind of ridiculous. They don't stick out further than the frame, and they are easy to engage. Like, wheeling this thing out is super comfortable, right? But if you want to flick this thing out, you got to get in exactly the right spot. It takes just a little bit, because if you do this, it's going to kind of, it's not going to go all the way out. Reverse flicking it, I mean, like, I can reverse flick it if I use the wrist, but because of the Hawklock's odd detent, it's like right here, right? Click. Because of that, it doesn't quite want to spring out like a knife that's got a detent that sucks the blade in much closer to the handle, like right there. This one's up here, right? So you have to get to that point, and then it'll kind of throw the blade. So you really have to like come way out here and then push that way, and it'll kick out, right? Fidget factor for me is mostly just in the clicky noise. It just makes really interesting noises, right? But if you want to do the snappy, quick deployments, I find myself naturally wanting to use wrist. Wheeling it out, which is I'm sure the way it was intended to be deployed, very easy. No issues there whatsoever. Let's take a look at this blade. The blade is awesome, man. Super robust geometry. Got a nice area up here. You really can choke up on this knife. This area right here is not really a choil, but it is very comfortable. You need to watch where your finger is. You can easily slide up on the blade, but if you really want to choke up on this knife, you definitely can. As large as the thumb studs are, they really manage to keep most of it completely out of the cutting path. You can see there. So you really can choke up on this knife and put, a lot of work into the blade. That's something I appreciate. Now, obviously, this was meant to appeal to people who are like, yeah, let's just slap, just make it ultra thick and just mega meaty, right? It's almost, well, it definitely is an excess, right? And I'm part of that audience. I think that's cool. But it's also very functional. The blade is definitely functional. It is ridiculously thick behind the edge. Really thick. It'll cut. Definitely looks like they've been using this. I mean, obviously they've been using this. It'll cut. You can get it sharp. It'll probably won't, shave cardboard or grapes, right? Or wax paper. But will it cut? Yeah, it'll cut. If you're going to take this outside and throw it around and use it like a tool, which it clearly has been, that's clearly how it's been being used. It will stand up just fine. That thicker geometry is going to add toughness, to a knife that is meant to be used in areas where, or in situations, or during cutting tasks that require excess toughness. So that's fine. Not every single knife needs to be open L geometry. The excess rope, like this knife clearly has had the tip just really, there was no mercy shown to the tip here, and it clearly has held up just fine. So that's cool. The back here, we have the Kai USA stamp, right? So it's got the, oh God, it does have the date on it. I was wrong. October of 2008. This is so much older than I thought. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I said 2012. No, apparently this is around 08. Wow. Serial number or the number of the knife, 1022. ZT 0500, Kai patented, made in USA. Yes, these are made in the USA. So that's neat. And then there's no stamp for the blade steel anywhere. But as far as I read from Knife Center, these are 154 cm. Let's see here. Honestly, the blade looks really good. ZT's always done a good job with symmetry of the blade and having it not look wonky or anything like that. And it is, while it is crazy, it is also kind of a straightforward blade. It's kind of a reverse tanto with a swedge running all the way from, you know, past this area right here all the way down to the tip. You have a flat that carries out about 50% the length of the blade, but that line out here still carries an enormous amount of thickness out to the tip. So the tip is obviously going to be super robust. ZT's logo right there. And then this is the tungsten, they use, apparently on this knife, I don't know if they use it on all their knives, this is a tungsten-based DLC, which is, I think, the same thing that Spyderco uses. Very, very durable, very hard. This right here, these scratches, it's likely not a scratch all the way through the DLC. It's likely just the powder of whatever it is that this came in contact with just being ground like almost permanently into the coating. That's generally how they, because the Rockwell hardness of that tungsten DLC is like 80 or 81, super hard. It looks like you can take these studs off. That's kind of interesting. And these are knurled back here, so there is some texturing on there. It'll definitely catch your thumb. Jimping back here. Ergonomically, this thing is really, you know, I mean, it definitely feels that you're locked in. Not going to be the most comfortable thing in the entire world for extended use. You know, just the bricky nature of this thing. This is a knife that you want to wear gloves with. You just do. There's some sharp edges. The texturing's pretty aggressive. You're going to want to wear gloves. But you know what? It's not like they didn't know that. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a manual that came with this thing that said, wear gloves. This isn't an EDC knife. Wear gloves. Right? That's just the way that that's what it makes me think. Kind of sucks that it's a proprietary pivot. You obviously need some, I mean, you can probably make something to get into this, but you're going to really mess that pivot up. It is something that you can't just turn with your fingers or just use it. It would have been nice to see like a massively oversized, like a T20 Torx with the same size of face, right? That would have been awesome. And then T8 hardware, I would just love that. This is like typical old school, you know, it's like we saw this a lot from Benchmade and ZT. They just have way too many screws. There's so many parts, and I wouldn't dare to take this thing apart anyway. But man, I appreciate how it looks. I really do. It's just a blast from the past. It looks so old school ZT, and obviously it's more MUDD than ZT, but it just makes me remember what ZT used to be all about, and I wish that they would do this again. This is so cool. There's the screw for the pocket clip on the other side, and then you've got this larger frame screw back here for the standoff. One standoff. This is a pillar construction. I'll give you guys a look at the inside. You can pick up my flashlight down in the description if you want to. No milling. I mean, it's all just solid 70-75 aluminum on the inside there. Like I said, it's completely and totally sealed off in the pivot. Not going to get anything in the pivot. You're just not going to, unless you, I mean, sure, put it in a vise and hit it with a sledgehammer and see if you can get it to break apart, and then just throw some dirt in there. Okay, then yeah, you could. But that's beyond what, you know, natural human force is, which is what you're going to be applying to this knife when you're using it. So that doesn't mean anything. It sounds ridiculous, but I always have somebody going, I bet I could get debris in there. I'm sure you could, but that's just not going to prove anything. Pocket clip, like I said, I really like it. This is definitely going to tear up your pants. 100%. It's going to tear up your pants. Other side of the knife, same as the front. This knife does have just a little bit of side-to-side blade play. Just a teeny tiny little bit, and it's probably because these need to be tightened down just a little bit more. I'm going to guess this thing has never been taken apart since 2008, right? And it has super slight, that was 12 years ago. 12 years ago, and it developed slight play, and it's still super smooth. It's still locking up pretty darn solid. No play up and down, just a little bit of side to side, and it is so minor. Just the slightest turn of that pivot, if I had the tool, I bet it would cancel that out. The knife is still centering. Yeah, it's still centered. Good Lord. Something that bothers me a little bit is the screw for the, could we see it? Where is it? Yeah, right there. The screw that's holding the pocket clip in is like not right. It's not the right length for the frame. Maybe that is not the same screw. Maybe that's an aftermarket screw that somebody had to place in there. I have no idea. Actually, no. It's just there's just one screw. That's why it's not showing through on the other side, because there's no screw on this side. There's no screw sticking in there. That's why there's no head. So I guess it's just going to be like that. But the blade's not contacting it. It's fine. blade doesn't move around or anything like that. It's unbelievably solid. This is super cool. Obviously, there are things that, you know, now in 2020 we'd consider flaws. Super thick, super heavy, super chunky, right? I don't like T6 screws. Blade geometry is unbelievably thick, right? It's mainly just how bulky of an object is that's gonna turn some people off. The main thing that's gonna turn you guys off is when you go check out what these go for on the secondary market. Finding one used, you're still gonna overpay for it. What do they go for brand new? Probably 200 something. I honestly can't remember, and I couldn't find anything that was perfectly accurate. But on the secondary market, they go for much more, even used. You want one that's mint, you're definitely gonna wait. You're gonna massively overpay for it. Collectors, people who collect folding knives, this is your ZT history right here. This is a landmarker for zero tolerance. If you're looking to complete a zero tolerance collection, or just an interesting knife collection that has knives from certain time periods that sort of define certain times in the knife world. Oh my gosh, this definitely should be a part of your collection, right? If you're used to overpaying for things just to complete certain areas of your collection, then yeah, go ahead, right? People who really want a super mega overbuilt knife that is truly capable and versatile in a number of different settings, and you don't care how much it is, yeah, this is one of the best choices out there, because the custom will still cost you way more, and it is equally, probably more, substantially more difficult to find. So yeah, you know, but for people watching this review and they're like, I just want a good, like, knife. No! No, not at all. I mean, that's the only way that I can, you know, conclude this. I think that this is awesome. This is one of the most legendary zero tolerance knives that has ever existed. And honestly, it's one of the coolest knives that I've ever seen, period. This isn't going in any of my recommended knives playlists, any of that stuff. But I'd be lying if I said it wasn't one of my favorites of all time. Yeah, this is one of my favorite knives ever. I'm definitely going to put it in my most my favorite knives of all time playlist. This is just cool. It's just ridiculous. And that, man, the sound of the... So cool. Click, 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 clack. I love that. All right. I think that's pretty much it. We're at 26 minutes. You can always tell when I'm like in love with something if it goes well past the 20-minute mark. Frankie and Bird, thank you so much for sending this to me. This was awesome. Go subscribe to Birdshot 4. I don't know why you wouldn't be. They're great. Please follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. I will link zero tolerance knives that you can actually buy right down in the description. If you'd like to check out zero tolerance, what's available right now, you are certainly welcome to. Any purchases that are made via my description, they do benefit the channel, so I would appreciate that, but of course you don't have to. That's perfectly fine if you don't want to. In any case, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do of course have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on this metal complex logo right here and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.